Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Eve and today's video is about the 11 books that I still want to read this year in 2021 so I can reach my reading goals that I set up in the beginning of the year. We have a nice mix here of classics, fantasy sequels and other literary fiction. And yeah, let's just start this and I will show you what I will be reading this year, at least I hope so. Fingers crossed. So the first book on this list is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is a book that won the Pulitzer Prize, so there must be something special about it, right? And this is literary fiction. We follow a professor and his students at university. And as far as I get, this is a modern classic today because it's set up like a Greek tragedy. And I guess that the professor will be influencing his students in I don't know, negative way. We don't know, right? But they might be, I don't know, setting up a secret society or something like this. I really have no idea. I just know that this is always a book that you can find in every bookstore and on one of the tables of the must-reads of, classic fiction, or at least for the last 30 years, because this was published in the 90s. Next up, we have a classic, which is Théophile Gaudier's Mademoiselle de Maupin. This is set, I think, in the 18th century, in France, of course. And we have a nobleman who always has a lot of affairs, and he's never really happy with the women that he's with. He's fantasizing about the perfect woman and the perfect lover, and he's embarking on another affair with a woman called Rosette, and she has one day a visitor, and it seems like this is a man. I guess it is actually a woman dressed as a man, but we don't know. And the main protagonist falls for this one, and there might be a ménage à trois here. I don't know, but it's very famous. It's a famous sensual novel, and it explores a lot about sexuality and desire. And yeah, I'm very interested to see what's so special about this book that it became a classic. The next book on this list is some kind of, let's say, confession of mine, because this is a book I had for a very, very long time. Now it's 16 years that I actually bought it, and it's a famous book. It's a classic. It's a Russian classic, and it's Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. So actually everyone probably of you might have either heard of this or even read it. I'm a very big fan of classics and of Russian classics, of Russian literature, and also everything that has some kind of a Russian setting. And here we know this is the famous story of Anna Karenina, who will have an affair as well. And she will fall for the man that she has an affair with. And because this is, I think, also 18th century or 19th century, so there is a lot of political intrigue here and betrayal and everything that we can think of that happens if a man finds out that his woman has an affair with another man. So I'm really, really excited to read this, but this was the reason why I haven't read it yet. It's like, I do not like big books very much. I have commitment issues, and I thought, okay, but 16 years, you have to do it this year. And I will, I promise. Continuing with the books that I had for a very, very long time, in this case as well, like 15 or 16 years, because I bought it when it was published, but I wanted to first finish the series, which was not finished at that time, and this is a prequel, and we are talking about Robert Jordan's New Spring. It is the prequel to The Wheel of Time, and The Wheel of Time is my favorite fantasy series. And at that time it was not finished yet. Brandon Sanderson still had to get through all of the notes that Robert Jordan left us in a way, and I wanted to first finish the series before I read you know, a prequel to that. But it's also because I know it's the last book that I will ever read that Robert Jordan actually wrote, and that's why I always was like, no, not this time. And you know, another year passed, and this year, as you might know, Amazon Prime has adapted The Wheel of Time. I'm so excited for this, and I thought it's time for this book to be read, because it might be included in the material that they actually used for the backstory of Moraine when she's coming to Emonsfield. And yeah, I'm excited to read this at last, and it will be hard, because it's some kind of saying goodbye. You know that you can always reread The Wheel of Time, but you know how long The Wheel of Time is. I don't know whether I will ever read it again. But yeah, it's like bittersweet. I'm already looking forward to this, but it will happen once we get the trailer, once we know when exactly The Wheel of Time will be dropping this year. I guess it will be in the end of the year. I hope we don't have to wait for next year, but yeah, this will be read then. And continuing with the books that I bought like 15, 16 years ago, I have a sequel, or let's say like the third book, the last book in a trilogy here, which I bought, and this is Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb, which is the third book in the Tawny Man trilogy. The Tawny Man trilogy is the second trilogy that follows the Bastard Fitz, who in the Farseer trilogy became an assassin for the kingdom, and then we follow him in the rest of his life in the Tawny Man trilogy, and later in Fitz and the Fool. And I bought this, as I said, a long time ago, and I started 2 years ago to read every year one of these books to, you know, stretch the time a bit that I still have with Fitz and the Fool. And yeah, this year it's the third book, the last book in this second trilogy, and I'm really looking forward to reading this, although it always has some kind of, it's also bittersweet, with like with The Wheel of Time, because it's always an end, even if I know that there is another trilogy with Fitz and the Fool, and this is not the end of the end, you see? There's still something coming after that, but yeah, this will be read this year. It should have been read already in January, because I always started the year actually with one of these books of Robin Hobb. But this year I was a bit lazy there, because we started the sequels in a fantasy series now. I have another sequel here that I will be reading this year for sure, and this is Red Seas Under Red Skies. This is the second book of the Gentleman Bastard sequence of Scotland. The first book is The Lies of Lord Gomorrah, which I read last year and I really loved. And here, this is something I got for my birthday, but I planned it anyway for this year to continue. It's not that just because I had this as a gift from my friend Claudia of Knits for the Soul that I just read this because of that. I'm very interested how we will continue the story now that Locke had to leave the city where he is actually living. And as we can see, this is some kind of a pirate setting, and I'm really, really interested in that, because I love everything that has something to do with seas and ships and water and the ocean, and I love Pirates of the Caribbean as well. And I guess it might have a bit of this touch as well, because Locke and his friend John are very much like very lovable idiots, and but they always have kind of good adventures, right? So I'm interested in that. I guess there will be a bit more magic in here than it was in the first book, The Lies of Lord Gomorrah. Curious. And the next sequel here that we have is Liberté by Gita Trellis. Last year I read Enchanté by Gita Trellis, which was my #1 pick in the best books of 2020. And this is a YA fantasy, and it's set in Paris, short before the revolution. And now here, as you can think of the title, Liberté, we will go into the French Revolution, actually. And this follows Camille, who is using petty magic tricks to survive, to feed her brother and her sister. And yeah, one day she realizes that she can transform herself into a baroness, and she goes to Versailles to gamble and cheat the aristocrats. And there she meets someone who's maybe a love interest. And yeah, that's what happens in the first story. It's very interesting, and I'm really curious to see what happens now, probably with the French Revolution coming and all of the turmoil in Paris unfolding in this story. Let's see what's happening to Camille and Lazare. And now we are coming to one of the most famous writers in fantasy, and I already mentioned him before, which is Brandon Sanderson, and I will be reading Warbreaker this year. I started the Stormlight Archive last year in 2020 with The Way of Kings, and someone somewhere said that either before the second book or after the second book you should be reading this to understand the world a bit better. So I actually bought this because I thought the premise quite interesting. It's so far I know it is a standalone. It will have a sequel in the future. I think Brandon Sanderson said something like this. And yeah, I did did enjoy The Way of Kings, but not as much as I hoped. But this is very interesting to me because it's two princesses. One shall be actually married in a political marriage, and the other one, is the other one. As you know, if you have a sister, there's always one that's more important. And but because the father doesn't want to give his baby girl away, so he gives the other sister away, who has never been trained to be a princess or a queen later. And there we go from there. She's sent to the other kingdom, and probably there is some kind of trouble. The next book is a book that I have a long history with because it was recommended to me in 8th grade, so more than 20 years ago. And it took me a long time to buy it. I bought it for my Christmas book haul last year, and this is The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I love the Arthurian legend, and I have been reading quite a lot last year about it, and I will read this year again a couple of novels that have this kind of setup or deal with the legend. And this is one of the most famous ones. And I think I did not even know it's the beginning of a trilogy. And it was published in the beginning of the 80s, so it's some kind of a classic already. It's older than me. And the special thing about this is that it's told from the perspective of the women of the story. It's not the knights that tell the story, it's not Merlin that tells the story, and it's not Arthur who tells the story. It is the women. It's Morgaine, Guinevere, and the Lady of the Lake, and probably other women that had something to do with the legend and the ongoings there. So I'm really, really interested to know what makes this book so outstanding that, first of all, that Penguin thought they want to publish this, and second, that it always pops up and it's always there in every bookstore that I go to. They always have this book, and I'm so intrigued to know what is so special about it. And yeah, that's also another reason why I was like, nah, maybe not this year, but this year will be the year of big books as well. I am reading a quite big book at the moment, and I really want to get better in this, because just because you have a lot of pages to go through doesn't mean that it's not good. Doesn't mean that the author hasn't had good editing to make it denser. So I really want to commit myself to that, and I'm really, really excited to see what my classmate, who told me in 8th grade that I need to read this, what she was fascinated by. And we have made it to the end. So this is the last book that we will actually be talking about. And it's one that I saw last year on a lot of BookTube channels. And I really, really wanted to read it already last year, but somehow I never got around to it. And that's why I bought it this year for my birthday. And it's Silvia Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic. I love Gothic stories. I love everything dark and everything with vampires as well, but I'm very picky there. It's not like, I don't like much of the YA stuff that has something to do with vampires. I am an Anne Rice fan, and so I crave more of the heavier side of the vampire trope. And what we have here is it's set in Mexico, which is something very special. Usually you have like, the old world where it's set and where it's dark and misty and, and our main protagonist, her cousin has been marrying an Englishman and she's living with him in his mansion in the countryside. And our protagonist gets a letter from her, which is very disconcerting. It's like, seems like her cousin is either getting crazy because she thinks someone is following her or that something is haunting her and something is not right. And so she goes to visit her in the mansion and we will see what's happening then. And I'm really, really interested to see what's happening. And I don't know whether it's also like a horror story or I just heard it's very atmospheric. It's very dark, and that's what intrigued me to read this. So guys, these were my 11 books that I still want to read this year. I hope that I get to all of them. If you liked my videos, please just thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so that you never miss whenever I show something new online. And yeah, I hope that you found a book that might be interesting for you, and I see you guys soon. Bye bye.